Hello everyone, my name is Anushka and I want to thank all of you and TEDx for inviting me and having me on this platform and allowing me to share my story with you. I want to start with a recent incident that happened with me. I was moving into my new apartment in Bombay in December and I was getting out of the cab and I had, big suitcases. And so the security guard of the building saw me, struggle because I was, evidently struggling with like 3 bags, and he nicely offered to help me come and take my bag upstairs to my apartment building. And so he takes my bags, he goes to the building elevator, and while we're in the elevator, he's asking me general questions about where I'm from, whether I've just moved in, and so on. And then there's a moment of silence. After that moment of silence, he goes, "मैडम, मुझे आपको देख के बहुत दया आती है, आपकी तो जिंदगी ही बर्बाद हो गई." Translation to English: I feel very sorry for you, your life is ruined. In this context, he was evidently referring to me having only one arm, which in turn meant that I didn't have a life. Some of you watching this might be wondering, oh my god, how can someone say that? You'd be surprised, but I get that a lot and all the time. To set some context, cut to 9 years ago, I am on a school trip with my friends from boarding school. It's March 2012. I am 15 years old. And as part of this school trip, we're in Gujarat. Now, because we were traveling in a large group, if you're traveling in a large group with 50 girls, you're using air-conditioned buses. So we were in Diu and we were wrapping up on the beach to, get a head start to go to the next city that we were supposed to be at. And Diu is actually the only place in Gujarat where you can get alcohol without a permit. So we're getting ready to go to the bus, and turns out our bus driver had indulged in a couple of drinks, and soon after that he got behind the wheel to drive us to where we were going. The next thing I remember is the bus losing its balance, hitting a divider, flipping to the right, and then skidding a few feet. And everyone around me went in panic mode. I remember people running out, screaming and frantically, all my friends were all frantically running out of the bus. And one of my friends kind of saw me because I was just I'd fallen flat to the right. And she saw me and she went, "Anushka, we gotta go, let's go." And I'm telling her, "Yeah, I'm coming." And my head is so dizzy. And I thought that it was because I'd hit my face to the glass on the side. And, because I was bleeding from that side, so I thought maybe that's why my head is dizzy. And I was frantically trying to maneuver myself, but I couldn't get myself up. And then my friend came back and she said, "Come on, we have to go." And I tried to get myself up. And obviously, by that time, I'd realized that my arm was nothing but flesh and bone, and there was a pool of blood to my right, which was all mine. By this time, my teachers and my friends have also realized that I'm severely injured. And Diu is a very small town, so there's a tiny hospital about 10-12 kilometers away from where we were. And despite the fact that it is a small town, somewhere and somehow that day there was a van full of army people and a van full of doctors, because there was a parade taking place in that city. Those army people helped get a crane and put the bus up. So they straightened the bus up, and I remember this man come up to me and he's telling me, "Shut your eyes," because when they were straightening the bus up, they obviously didn't want the remainder of the glass to kind of go into my eyes. I was rushed to the nearest hospital, and by then I'd lost 60% of my blood. One of these army individuals had also donated blood to me that night. Safe to say that he's one of the many reasons that I am alive and sitting here giving this talk in the first place. Let it also be known that my parents at this point in time are in a different city altogether, and all they've been told is that I am injured and I've been taken to the hospital. So what they went through that night was a completely different story, because they had no idea whether I had an arm or not. They'd just been told that my right hand was severely injured and that I had no pulse and no blood pressure. There was also a teacher that night who eventually, once they stabilized me, rode with me to a different city that was 4 hours away, where I was supposed to be taken for further medical assistance. That teacher is also one of the reasons why I'm here today. After that, another city that I was moved to, I was finally moved to Bombay for an extended stay at the hospital and, for further recovery. 8 months after that, and after I recovered of all my injuries, I went back to boarding school. And that very teacher who'd ridden with me that night in that ambulance in the middle of the night to a different city, while I was in the condition that I was in, had been diagnosed with swine flu and also passed away. I had basically suffered 2 incredible losses in 1 year. Now, the harder part of going through this incident is not the fact that I lost an arm and then I had to, learn how to do everything from scratch, such as wearing my clothes, writing with my left hand, and so on. The harder part of this is the societal scrutiny that comes with being a physically disabled individual, or a physically disabled woman in my case, in India. Because Indian society simply assumes that if you have a physical disability, it's the end of the road for you. Now, I work in a relatively open-minded environment, and I'm surrounded by people such as my colleagues and my friends who I don't have to justify anything to. I don't have to tell them or explain to them as to how I lead my life on a regular basis. But an auto driver and an Uber driver taking me to my next destination will always bring up the fact that nobody's going to marry me. Leave that aside. There's a certain educated section of Indian society that in the past has walked up to me and asked me as to what I'm doing with my life and whether I've thought about the marriage situation with my situation. It is these assumptions that weigh you down in the long run. And even if you are thriving and doing well for yourself, they instill a feeling of self-doubt. And you begin to wonder that because you aren't as society would want you to be conventionally, it just makes you wonder, are you not good enough? It is also these assumptions that are the reason why accessibility provisions are essentially non-existent in India. Because if you don't talk about how a certain section of people leads their lives, how and why would you make an effort towards finding solutions to their problems? Do you all know that every time I go to a salon to get waxed, because I'm a girl, so I have to get waxed. Every time I go to a salon to get waxed, I have to pay for both arms. I mean, there's no provision and it's a standard price. So every time I'm at the cash counter, the cashier gets really awkward and then he or she doesn't know what to say. And then they charge me the full 1,000 rupees. And I mean, there's no way that I'm getting 2 arms waxed. So, and that is the problem. The problem is that there is no conversation surrounding people with disabilities in India. And that is why there are no solutions to the little things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. I realized the lack of accessibility provisions in India when I first went to the United States. While I was there, went to the United States to study. While I was there, nobody was staring at me. Nobody really questioned how I was, how I was leading my life. Nobody ever told me that, oh, you don't have an arm, so your life is over. They never scrutinized me. They simply lauded me for leading the life that I was leading. And they never questioned as to why I was in a 50 people dance class or why wall climbing with one arm was a good idea. It was that sense of normalcy that gave me the confidence to be in that 50 people dance class in the first place, despite the fact that I knew that I probably wouldn't get most steps right. It made me feel comfortable in my own skin. That sense of normalcy is what was essentially acceptance for me in my case. And I felt so accepted that by the time I moved back to India post-graduation, the scrutiny stopped bothering me. I started brushing off the stares and the questions. I remember in my early days after my accident, there was a point in time where I would walk into a restaurant or any crowded place and I would pretend to be on my phone because I knew people were staring at me. So I would pretend to text even though I wasn't texting anyone, and I would rush to my table because I simply did not want to acknowledge the fact that they were looking, because that would make me very uncomfortable. But that isn't the case anymore. I realized that I may not be able to change the fundamentals of society, but what I can do is change the narrative and change my narrative. The bus driver who was the reason behind this accident and the reason for a lifetime's worth of damage done to me served a mere 3 months in jail, and he's out and walking free. Now, I definitely cannot do anything about that absurdly reduced sentence, but what I can do is that I can do something with my life. I realized that all I had to do was turn the why me, why did this happen to me, into unfortunately me, and what's next. I realized that the alleged limitations that I thought I had and that were preventing me from doing the things that I can do today weren't bothering me because I couldn't do anything. They were bothering me because they were being reinforced by people I didn't even know. So I broke free from the cage of that scrutiny and from the weight of that scrutiny by realizing one thing only, and that is that I can do whatever I want. I realized that you don't need to prove yourself to everyone as long as you are at peace with the fact that you are doing great. Because when you are comfortable in your own skin, you exuberate a sense of confidence that makes the others comfortable around you. I realized that you don't need 2 hands to clap back at society and tell them that you can in fact do everything that the people around you can, if not more. And that is essentially what redefined freedom for me. I channeled my energy towards doing things for people like me. I've worked with NGOs in the past, and my current workplace has a program that is working towards making all written and video content accessible to individuals with cognitive disabilities. This is how I managed to find the positives in a tragedy like this one and actually reap the benefits out of it to move ahead and move forward. And this is what you can do to make differently abled individuals like me a little bit more comfortable in their own skin and in their society and in society. 1, normalize. Normalize conversation around the fact that there is a certain section of people that may not look as conventional as everyone else, but still manages to do the same things and lead a normal life, if not more, on a daily basis. 2, spark a conversation. Talk about the struggles that people like us go through regularly, because only then will you be able to assist them and find solutions and make society more inclusive and accessible to all. 3, and the most important one, always keep an open mind, because you never know, a person with a disability, visible or not visible, may have the potential of a lifetime and may actually surprise you with what they can do after all. Thank you.